Welcome back to Ash's Reality Recaps. This is The Curse of Oak Island, Season 11, Episode 24, A Hairy Situation. Now we'll get into that in a minute. But before we even get into the recap, let me just show you, historically speaking, that there cannot be a connection between the Templars and the Vikings. So over here we have the Vikings, 800 AD to 1050 AD is their historical reign. Over here we have the Templars, who were in order from 1119 to 1312 AD. The Templars were not created until after the Vikings went away. Now, that's not saying that historically some of the remnants of, the Vikings may have managed to help or become Templars. It's hard to say, but as far as that true connection between the Vikings and the Templars, historically speaking, didn't happen. But Oak Island just keeps trying to shove that in our face week after week with these outrageous, notions and thoughts and hypotheses, and they're just stretching very far at this point. That's a long period of time between 800 to 1312 as it is. Anything that happened between 1119 and 1312, they could have went in and used some of these Viking caves that were already in existence and scrolled some of their symbols into those walls. It doesn't show a connection. It just shows reuse of something that was already there from a previous period. So, let's jump into this recap, shall we? For the most part, nothing new on Lot 5, but in all honesty, they dug into the bottom of this foundation and they've recovered a small lead artifact that's potentially a weight. Let's move on to the next section. As we talked about last week, the majority of the Oak Island team have been in Europe for the past 2 weeks. They started in Italy, went to the Netherlands, and ended up in Iceland, where basically all they really did was acknowledge that the Vikings were part of trade routes that traded from Iceland to the Netherlands to Italy and eventually traveled into the New World, where some artifacts were found in Nova Scotia. They matched loosely some of the Roman coins found on Oak Island to Roman coins found in Iceland that are directly tied to the Vikings. Nowhere in there did we talk about the Templars, so all they've really done is take the Templars out of the equation and show that the Vikings are the individuals that were on Oak Island. No treasure associated with them, but the Vikings are the only ones right now that have that direct connection to Oak Island. Not the Templars, not the Spanish, not anybody else that they've thrown over the last couple of years. The Vikings, which is of no contention at this point because we know the Vikings were in Nova Scotia in the New World. Let's move on to the next section. Now, loosely speaking, very, very loosely speaking, could some remnants of the Vikings become part of the Templars throughout history and kind of influence some of the Templar thought processes? It is possible and it is potential, and the reason I say so is because if you look at where the Vikings traveled down through, you can see down through, I'll try to do it this way, you can see down through here all the way into Italy and back up through this range, and when we come back over here to where the Templars were, you can see the Templar range was very similar down into Italy. So there are some parts in this area where you can truly see that the Vikings may have had some settlements and left some individuals there that eventually through, just reproduction ended up having some family there that became part of the Templars and had some of that old historical value from the Viking era that transitioned into some of the Templar lore. But again, no direct connection. The time frames don't match. But they were in similar areas in different periods of time. Let's move into the last part of this. And bringing it all into home as to why the episode is called A Hairy Situation. Well, if you remember last week, the Leginas found a rock underneath of a rock with a hair inside of it as they waded into a puddle and just roughly dug their hands through it. There's so many other things they could have done underneath of that boulder, such as actually do some excavation. But no, they waded knee-deep into the water, jammed their hand down into a puddle, and brought up a rock and said, hey, this looks significant. Can't make this up. You really can't make it up. Just watch last week's episode and you'll see that. Anyhow, they took this rock with this hair in it to some scientists. They zoomed in on the hair and they said, hey, it's not human, which is truly no surprise. But they said it's obviously some kind of animal, to which the entire team went, how did a hair get under a rock? Well, there's rodents. We know that the boulder was moved at some time in the past. There's just so many other options of how that hair could have got to where it is. I know the one thing that the team is looking for is that is it an oxen hair? If it's an oxen hair, then it shows that oxen were on the island, which, again, we're not really going to debate that. We know that at some point the military was there. We know that there were, items moved around on the island, historically speaking, outside of the potential, money pit area. So no shock that there would be some kind of hair under that rock. They're blowing this way out of proportion at this point, but just so you know, the hair in the rock, under the boulder, in the mud, it's not a human hair. No surprise. And that is your Curse of Oak Island recap, season 11, episode 24. How has this been on for 24 episodes this season? I don't know, but we got a couple more to go. Stick with me. We'll find out if we find any more wood or rocks or mysterious animal hairs and whatever kind of, made up theories that the team can come up with. We'll crack them open and see what we can say. But that is the Curse of Oak Island recap, Ash's reality recaps. See you next week.